Under the employee issues, there are many subjects that we have to cover, like hiring and firing, pay, meaningful work, equal opportunities, health and safety, job creation and security, trade unions, and whistleblowing. Okay, so in the employer-employee relations, we give emphasis on the duty side of employer because employers usually have more power than employees and so have greater discretion in how they treat employees. So in the relationship between the employer and employee, employer are supposed to give proper care about their employees. Okay, so these are the issues. So we are going to cover these subjects one by one. Okay, first one is hiring and firing. So the starting point of an employee issues is the hiring. Okay, and the final issue is the firing. So these issues are very important. Okay, so they deserve the first issues in the employee issues. So let's think about hiring. About hiring, we have to give emphasis on the discrimination issues. Okay, discrimination in employment should be legally prohibited, and it is morally wrong. This is what they say. Okay, but there are some discussions about the nature of the discrimination. So there are two questions. When does the use of a certain criterion in an employment decision count as discriminatory? Okay, there are many situations that deserve some discrimination. Okay, so can we say that all the discrimination is wrong? Uh, but there are some of the more questions we have to answer. So whether hiring practice is discriminatory depends on whether the criterion used is job relevant. Okay, suppose that white diners prefer to be served by white waiters rather than black waiters. In this case, race seems job relevant, but it is also seems wrong for employers to take race into account. Okay, so there are many gray areas. There is not. This is not a kind of black and white, uh, issue. Okay, so in these cases, there are many gray areas. Okay, then the one makes discrimination wrong. So this they're saying that why discrimination is wrong. Discrimination is wrong because of its effects on those who are discriminated against. It is wrong because of what it expresses to them. Okay, but in the real life, I'd like to ask whether we are not discriminating. Okay, so so to try to find out good person, okay, the relevant person for the relevant job. That is the most important point in the personnel management. Okay, so in such a case, the work of trying to find out the relevant workers for the some relevant job can be interpreted as a discrimination. So there are many gray areas. Okay, there is no hard and fast rule for the discrimination. Okay, and firing. Okay, firing. In the Asian culture, uh, the fire is a kind of bad word. Okay, but we remember in the TV appearance of Donald Trump, the ex-U.S. president, would yell out that you are fired. Okay, I think it must have been very shocking to hear such an expression. Okay, but in the United States, that's what they do. Okay, and I'm not saying that is wrong. Okay, so uh, there are two camps about the firing. Okay, so one of the camps are saying that the employer can terminate an employee for any reason at will. Okay, versus there's another camp that employers should be able to terminate employees only for just cause, only when there are some enough reasons. Okay, for example, poor performance or a business downturn. So in the United States, most employees are at will, while in Europe, most employees are covered after a probation period by something analogous to just cause. So this reminds me of the old settings in the 30 years ago when while I was working for Citibank. There was a training course in the Singapore. The name was a Bruce game. Bruce means Bruce is a French word, and Bruce means exchange. Okay, so in the course we are trained the foreign exchange uh, trading. Okay, and there was at the end of the training course, a personnel manager from the Singapore Citibank came to the venue, okay, of the training. It was at the time the facility, it was the hotel, and uh, there was a very young lady from Singapore Treasury Department who came to for the training, and at the time the personnel manager uh, meet her and said that this may not be a good job for you. Okay, so you do not fit for the kind of FX trader. Okay, so uh, she was saying that uh, you are fired. Okay, so she is saying that it is better for you to fit your career here while she was in her still probationary period. Okay, so it was possible for the personnel manager to say goodbye, okay, to her, and she was crying. At the time, it was really a shock for me because there was no such a thing happening in Korea that is beyond imagination. Okay, such a thing cannot happen simply. But now, I think it could have been better decision for her because I don't think it's very good idea, to uh, drag down uh, to the justice, okay, to the legal help. Uh, so I think it may be better for them to finish their relation, okay, as early as possible. So it must have been very painful at the time to face the fact, okay, to face the truth. But if someone is not talented in some field, it's better for them to pick the job as soon as possible, as early as possible. Okay. So I think uh, it was a blessing in disguise. Such an accident, such an incident. Okay. So these days, I think someone who's telling you that you do not fit in this kind of job, he is a very good mentor. Okay. So because after 3 or 4 years of unhappy marriage, you then find out that there's something wrong with your career, and then you try to move another job, then it is much more difficult if we to find new job. Okay, so I'm not sure which side is right or wrong. Okay, at will or just cause. Okay, so I think there are many sides for this kind of matter. Okay? There is no black and white solution. Okay, so rather than the cheap consolidation, the true advice, okay, about someone's talent may be better for the employee. That's what I think now. Okay, so your opinion may be different from mine, and it can change. Okay, I may change my opinion later, but I'd like to emphasize that there are many sides about the same story. Okay, and the second issue is the pay. It is a long lasting question whether someone is receiving the 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 good the, the the just pay, okay, in their job. Okay, so there are two kinds of views found in the justice and pay issues. The agreement view says that the just wage is whatever wage the employer and the employee agree to without force or fraud. This view is sometimes justified in terms of property rights. Okay? Employees own their labor and the employers own their capital, and they are free within broad limits to dispose of it as they please. So this is a market view. In the market, two owners meet each other. One has the labor and the other has the capital. Okay, so without force or fraud, they can negotiate, okay, the price of the labor in the free market, and the pay that is decided in this market is, they say, the just, okay, the good price. On the other hand, there's another view, contribution view. Okay, in the contribution view, they are saying that the just wage for a worker is the wage that reflects her contribution to the firm. Okay, an analogy may be drawn with punishment, just as it seems intuitively right for the severity of a criminal's punishment to reflect the seriousness of a crime. So it may seem intuitively right for the value of a worker's pay to reflect the value of a work. Okay, this sounds very reasonable, but I'm not sure whether we have any kind of measure uh, to decide, the value of the labor. It is not so easy. Okay, so on the absolute version of the contribution view, they say the workers should receive an amount of pay that equals the value of their contributions to the firm. Okay, and on the comparative version, workers should receive an amount of pay that reflects the relative value of their contributions to the firm, given what others in the firm contribute and are paid. So these two versions are based on the assumption that they can decide, okay, they can measure the contribution of each individual, okay, in each individual employees. This is very hard, I think. And let's think about the case in the Nomura Securities. That is the most prestigious security brokerage house in Japan. A worker in Nomura Securities have moved to a less prestigious stock brokerage company. In Nomura, he would make 30 billion yen of profits, okay, from the customer. But in the new job, he could not make 1/10 of the money, okay, in the new company. And we cannot but ask, what was his contribution in Nomura? Why there was some big difference? Okay, so there are many questions about the contribution view. Though contribution view seems to be very right and very just and very good, very reasonable, but I'm not sure whether there is any clear-cut version of uh, the measuring the 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 performance, okay, of each individual. And in the employee issues, the CEO pay is one of also the very important issues these days, because in the old days, the the ratio of average annual CEO compensation to average worker compensation was very low. Like in Japan, I think it must have been 10 times, 20 times, or something like that. But these days, especially in the United States, the ratio of average annual CEO compensation to average worker compensation is more than 300 times or so. Okay, that means CEO is making some average workers' annual uh, revenue every day. Okay, so we cannot but ask whether this is fair. Okay, fair practice. We'd like to know whether they are contributing to the corporation that much. Okay, uh, so there are so there are consensus that the CEOs are paid too much, but how this can happen? Okay, there are two views: managerial power camp and efficient contracting camp. So in the managerial power camp, they say that the CEOs will power over boards of directors and use this power to extract above market rents from their firms. Okay, so they are powerful enough to move the board of directors. Okay, that's the source of their uh, the power. Okay, to raise their own uh, compensation. On the other hand, in the efficient contracting camp, they say that pay negotiations between CEOs and boards are usually carried out at arm's length, and the CEO's large compensation packages reflect their rare and valuable skills. So they say that it's the result of the CEO's capability. Okay, so their managerial power, managerial performances. Okay, and I don't know which side are you going to support, but I myself cannot say, the any clear-cut answer for this kind of question. But uh, I think it's very strange, for the CEO to receive such a high amount of money, okay, from the corporation. And these days, Korean companies are also imitating this kind of the practice, okay. So this is the first section, okay.